Okay, let's be honest about something. Information has never really changed human behavior. I mean, if it did, nobody would be stuck doing the things they know are hurting them. That's not being negative. It's just looking at what's actually happening. We're swimming in information. Advice is everywhere. Motivation is a billion-dollar industry. And yet, so many of us are still quietly stuck in the same cycles we've been trying to break for years. And that right there, that tells us something. The problem isn't that we don't know better, and it's not that we don't want to change. So what's going on? It's deeper than knowledge. It's deeper than just not having enough discipline. It lives in that space between knowing and doing, that gap between your intention and your follow-through. And if you've been living in that gap for a while, you already know the usual solutions don't reach it. They just don't. Most people don't struggle because they're ignorant. They struggle despite being aware. You know the habit's damaging. You know what it's costing you: time, focus, pieces of your confidence. You know it's keeping you smaller. You've watched the videos, read the posts, listened to the podcasts. You've given yourself the pep talks. You've told yourself, this is the last time. And you meant it. So when someone just says, you need more discipline, something in your gut whispers, that's not it. Because if discipline alone worked, this wouldn't still be happening. You wouldn't be here listening to this, wondering why you keep ending up back in the same place. This isn't a character flaw. It's a human experience. And just acknowledging that, that's the first real step. There's this cycle, and it usually starts so quietly. You make a promise to yourself, a sincere one, not out loud, internally, in that serious, determined tone that says, this time is different. And for a while, it works. You feel clearer, lighter, a bit more focused. You start thinking, hey, maybe this wasn't such a big deal. Maybe I just needed to really decide. A subtle confidence trickles back. Not loud, just enough. It feels like you've cracked the code, like you've got the reins again. But here's the thing. That phase, it's deceptive. It feels like victory, but you're still operating from the same source, your own resolve, your own willpower. And then, life happens. It's rarely some big desire that pulls you back. It's usually something smaller and much more human. A stressful Tuesday, a lonely evening, a boredom that feels heavy, a disappointment in yourself, a fatigue you can't even explain. Nothing dramatic, nothing you'd post about. Just a small, emotional imbalance. A feeling you can't quite name, but you can feel it in your body. A hollow restlessness, a quiet ache. And in that moment, the thing you promised you wouldn't do, it doesn't feel like temptation. It feels like relief. Not excitement, relief. So you do it. And in that moment, it's not rebellion, it's regulation. It's your nervous system just trying to feel normal again, trying to manage a feeling with the only tool it thinks it has. Afterwards, there's a reset. You don't always spiral. Sometimes you just go numb. You tell yourself, all right, tomorrow. Next week. I'll do better next time. And you move on. But something has shifted. Not on the outside, on the inside. That promise you made to yourself, it's been broken again. And you were the one who broke it. This is where the real damage starts to pile up. Not in the action itself, but in what the action teaches you about you. At first, the problem seems like the behavior. But over time, the real damage happens somewhere else entirely. Every relapse, every broken promise, it teaches your mind something. Not in words, in experience. It teaches you, I can't be trusted. My word to myself doesn't mean anything. My resolve is fragile. My intentions aren't enough. And once that belief takes root, everything gets heavier. Your confidence doesn't collapse all at once. It erodes quietly, like a cliffside worn down by a constant gentle sea. You hesitate more, second-guess yourself. You lower your expectations, not out loud, but inside. You still show up, You still function. You might even achieve things. But something in you stops reaching for more. Because reaching requires trust, and you don't trust the one who has to do the reaching. You. At some point, you just stop expecting much from yourself. You don't announce it. You don't even decide it. It just happens. One day, you realize you've stopped making those fierce internal promises. You've stopped believing in grand turnarounds. You're still ambitious, but it feels hollow, like you're reading a script without any conviction. You still have goals, but they don't feel connected to belief anymore. You start moving through life passively. Not because you want to, but because you don't trust yourself enough to move forward with any real conviction. This is where so many people get stuck, for years. Not failing loudly, just drifting, quietly, performing life, but not really inhabiting it. And in the background, there's a question you avoid asking directly. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's terrifying. Is this just how my life is going to be? Not in a crisis way, in a quiet, resigned way. Is this the ceiling? Is this the level of self-authority I'll always have? So instead of answering it, you distract. You give yourself little doses of hope, not real hope, just enough to stay sane. Hope that keeps you functional, but doesn't actually change anything. You tell yourself things like, one day I'll get serious. This isn't the real me. I just need to try harder. When things calm down. But quietly, you don't really believe those words anymore. And that is exhausting. Because pretending to believe something takes more energy than just admitting you don't. This kind of hope isn't fuel. It's a coping mechanism. It's cognitive dissonance dressed up as motivation. It lets you survive the gap between who you are and who you want to be, without actually ever closing it. It's what keeps you in the loop. Now, up to this point, I haven't named the specific behavior. Not because it doesn't matter, but because the behavior isn't the center of the problem. If we only focus on the action, we miss the person doing it. We miss the why. We miss the ache. We miss the quiet search for regulation in a life that feels unregulated. So, let's name it, calmly. For some, this shows up as porn or compulsive masturbation, a cycle of arousal and numbness, searching for connection or relief in a place that can't give it. For others, it's alcohol, a drink to take the edge off that becomes the only way to quiet the noise inside. For others, it's hours of numb scrolling, endless videos, binge watching just to avoid being alone with your own thoughts. The infinite scroll, a literal metaphor for a mind running from its own depths. Different behaviors, the same pattern. A search for temporary regulation, a loss of internal authority, a broken trust with yourself. And focusing only on the behavior misses what's happening underneath. It's like treating a fever without asking about the infection. Here's a truth most people never hear. If this was about willpower, you'd already be free. You've tried motivation, discipline, rules, accountability apps, starting over on Monday, starting over on the first of the month. You've white-knuckled it. You've negotiated. You've bargained. Willpower doesn't disappear because you're weak. It collapses because emotion overrides it. And life is emotional. Your brain, in a moment of stress or loneliness or overwhelm, will always prioritize short-term emotional regulation over a long-term logical goal. Every single time. That's not a moral failure. That's a neurological reality. Your repeated failure isn't proof you're broken. It's proof you've been trying to carry something you were never meant to carry alone. You've been trying to be both the source of the solution and the one who executes it. You've been trying to lift yourself by your own bootstraps while standing in the boots. So, the real question isn't, why can't I stop? The real question is, why am I trying to do this all by myself? And that question, that changes everything. It moves the problem from a personal failing to a structural one. It shifts the focus from your ability to your approach, from your strength to your source.
By this point, Some of you are tired just listening, not because this is heavy, but because you've been carrying this for years. Exhaustion isn't failure. It's a signal that something is being carried the wrong way. Every attempt you've made started with more effort, more control, more pressure, more rules, and none of it ever gave you rest. It might have given you short-term control, but never deep, abiding rest. Rest isn't the absence of work, it's the presence of peace in the work. It's the difference between carrying a weight with strained, shaking arms and carrying it on a strong, fitted frame that bears the load for you. There is a voice in the middle of all this striving that doesn't ask you to try harder. It doesn't demand discipline first. It doesn't start with correction. It starts with invitation. An invitation to rest. Not rest as escape, not rest as giving up. Rest as the moment you stop trying to be your own source of strength. Rest as transferring the burden of your transformation to someone who can actually carry it. This is what Jesus was speaking to. Not to people who were careless, but to people who were exhausted from carrying themselves. People who were weary, burdened, tired of the loop. He didn't call the strong. He called the weary. Not to shame them, but to relieve them. His first move was not a command, it was an offer. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. The offer is not for the perfect, it's for the tired. The prerequisite is not cleanliness, it's exhaustion. You don't have to fix yourself to come. You come because you can't fix yourself. This is where the concept of new starts to mean something real. New doesn't mean the past never happened. It doesn't mean temptation disappears. It doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy. It doesn't mean you'll never feel the pull of old patterns again. New means you are no longer fighting from the same place. You're no longer alone in the struggle. Your identity is no longer tied to your performance in the struggle. And your future no longer depends on how stable you feel emotionally today. New means the source of your strength has changed. The location of your authority has shifted. You are no longer the general of a war you're losing. You're a soldier in a war that's already been won. A life under guidance behaves differently than a life under pressure. The pressure says, you must do this or you fail. The guidance says, follow me, and you won't be walking this alone. The pressure comes from inside you, and it's finite. The guidance comes from outside you, and it's limitless. The difference going forward isn't effort, it's source. Who carries the weight of your life? Who holds the authority over your decisions? Who you report to? Who you surrender to? Surrender here isn't weakness, it's the ultimate intelligence. It's admitting that self-sourcing has led to self-distrust and choosing to be sourced by something, by someone, that will not fail. What you're facing isn't rare, it's human. And you're not the only one who's been here. You don't have to figure this out in isolation anymore. The very act of realizing you can't do it alone is the beginning of the solution. It's the crack in the wall of your self-sufficiency where the light gets in. The way forward doesn't start with fixing everything. It starts with stopping the fight you were never meant to fight alone. It starts with a quiet, internal shift from I have to beat this to I can't beat this, but I know who can. It starts with a simple, honest turning, not a dramatic altar call, a whisper in your room, a thought in your car. I can't, but you can. I'm tired. You promised rest. That's the starting point. Not a promise of perfection, but a transfer of trust from your own broken record of promises to a promise that was made to you a long time ago, a promise that doesn't depend on your ability to keep it. There is a way forward, and it doesn't depend on how strong you feel today. It depends on recognizing that you were never meant to be the source of your own strength in the first place.